Hi everyone, so welcome to our live demonstration class, and today I want to show you how to decorate up a hat box. This is an ideal class for the complete beginner or maybe even the person that has a little bit of experience. I'm going to keep it very simple, but also the materials I'm going to use will be quite inexpensive. So for our hat box, first of all I'm going to use one of these flat pack hat boxes. So these are available from a wholesaler. Now I know there's a lot of people watching that maybe doesn't buy from wholesalers if you're doing it at home yourself, so you will be able to buy these from your local flower shop. Obviously when I have the students on our professional training courses, we cover all about wholesalers, getting trade cards, getting them set up with an account that they can actually import all their own flowers wholesale direct from Holland. Now flower wise I'm going to use tulips. We get a lot of questions about tulips, conditioning and treating of them. If you were to go to our blog, which is on our website www.flowerschoolisland.com, or even if you go to our YouTube channel Case Flower School, I have lots of blogs on treatment and conditioning of tulips. So I won't go into it too much today because again, when you're attending our professional programs, we cover all about the treatment and conditioning of all types of flowers. But just a little bit of knowledge or a few notes to write down yourself. Normally when you're purchasing tulips, they're sold in multiples of 10. You can buy them in mixed colours, I have today, or it is possible to buy them in all the one colour. So I have that you could go to your local grocery shop or local florist shop, supermarket, and you can buy 2 bunches of tulips because that's probably how they're going to be sold. I'm going to use this flower here as a little filler going in between it. This is called wax flower and it's a short stem, as you can see. So when you go to purchase flowers, again from a flower shop or from a wholesaler's, the price determines on the length that they are. And normally the longer they are, the higher the grade and obviously the more flower sets on them. So because this is a low or a short length, you will find that there's very little flower to see on one stem. So this would be classed as a lower grade. Not that that means there's anything wrong with it, it's just that it's a lower weight. So when you buy a lower weight, you pay a lot less for it. But the usual, the way I often say to you, pay peanuts and you get monkeys, that way. If you pay a lot less, you obviously get a lot less material. So because this, just has very little material on it, I am going to use approximately 5 stems. The tulips, by the way, 2 bunches of 10, so that would be 20 tulips in total. Foliage wise, just go out to your own garden and see what foliage you happen to have. If you have something different to what I'm using today, comment underneath, ask is it suitable, and then I will always respond to your questions. Or throughout the tutorial, if you do have any questions, just post them in the comments below. So the foliage I'm going to use today is called Pittosporum. And this is something that most people, or maybe your neighbour or your mum or your friend, may have this growing in their garden. If you don't have it growing in your garden and you have a little bit of space, I definitely recommend go to a garden centre and buy a Pittosporum bush. Again, if you go to our website, under the blogs on our website, flowerschoolisland.com, there's a lot of information about what foliages you can grow in your own garden that are suitable for using in flower arranging, floristry, and also simply floristry and hand-tied bouquets. And when you're buying in Pittosporum, it comes variegated, which is what I have here today. So there's like a little cream edge on it. I personally love that one. But there's a dark green one, which is absolutely gorgeous as well. And another of my favourites is there's one, and it's kind of like a purpley, wine, burgundy, dark brown sort of shade. If you have space in your garden, buy all 3 colours because I'm telling you, they're evergreen, they're really easy to grow. Once you can dig a hole and stick it down in it and water it ever so often. So what you're going to do with your foliage is cut it into lengths about 20 centimetres approximately. So you will need a sharp scissors and you see just cut it off like that, cut it off like that. And if one of them is a little bit longer or a little bit shorter than the other, that's absolutely fine. So the foliage that you have, cut it up and you'll see when I'm making the arrangement, and just to make it easy for yourself, count the pieces that I'm using while I'm sticking them into the floral foam. Because at the moment I kind of have skinny pieces here, but sometimes when you're cutting it from your tree or your bush in your garden, you may find that you have some that are a little bit fuller. But you can see on this branch here, it's mostly skinny pieces, that way. So cut up your foliage 20 centimetres rough guess, I'd say you'll need about 20 pieces, okay? Obviously, if they're a little bit fuller, you'll need a little bit less. Also, what you're going to need is a bowl, which we call a bulb bowl. Now, by the way, we do have these hat boxes and bulb bowls and the floral foam for sale on our website. So if you go to flowerschoolireland.com and look under floral sundries, you'll see a lot of the materials for sale. So this is what a block of foam typically looks like. And for this particular arrangement, you will need a half a block. So whether you go to your local flower shop, garden centre, or you buy it here from the school, just basically cut it in half. And the easiest way is drop it into a bucket of water. So I already have this one soaked. So where I just had filled up the bucket of water, dropped it in, it took about 100 seconds, you know, that way it's full of water now, and you'll find then that it wedges nice and secure down into the bulb bowl. If you happen to have anchor tape, but a lot of people that are only starting off haven't got anchor tape. Anchor tape is a tape that you can attach across the top of the bulb bowl and it'll stop it falling out. But it's absolutely not necessary for the particular design that I'm doing today. So back to the hat box. So what you have to do is assemble it. As I said, they come flat packed. The directions is on the end of the box, you know, that way. Now on this cream one, the writing is, because it's cream, it's actually faint to see. But it is numbered number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So if you look at it close, you know what I mean, you can just flatten that down into the centre. That's what it looks like. And then look for the flaps that have, say, 2 and 3 on them. And then 4 and 5, actually I'm going the wrong way around here, 2 and 3, 4 and 5. And the last one, this is number 6. And this particular one goes into that little slit. See, it's like a letterbox. So if it means kind of bending that over, using one hand inside the box, one hand on the outside of the box, you know what I mean, to get it in through the letterbox or the little flap there, you can see the way it holds all the other pieces in place. And then in the inside of the box then, you can just flatten that down. So they're really easy, and they do come in other colours. And by the way, there's other colours, just I don't happen to have them here in stock. Now there's little ribbons at the side, and they're kind of held together with little like shoelace secure thing at the end there. So there's one ribbon on that side and one ribbon on the other side, and it's just nice to carry them. So they're a very simple hat box, but there's huge range of hat boxes out there. And again, when you're attending our professional courses, we do cover all the different types of hat boxes, the different wholesalers that you can buy them in, what the arrangements are costing you to make, and obviously what the selling price is. But as I said, we're going to keep it really simple here today. So how you assemble it up, you get your bulb bowl with your floral foam already set down into it. And a little tip for you, if you want to fill this bulb bowl halfway up with water now, the oasis is already soaked, okay? But if you fill it halfway up with water, it means it'll keep the arrangement nice and fresh for you. And if you store it in a cool room, you'll get a good week out of it. It obviously depends on the flowers that you're going to use, but tulips normally last about 6 to 7 days if kept in a cool room. If your room is a little bit warmer, you may find you'll get a day or two less. But the great thing is you can always just pull out the tulips and you can replace them with something else. The greenery is going to last for ages, and the wax flower is going to last for ages. And if anybody has a problem getting wax flower because it's not available all year round, you could substitute it for something like gyp, or even some dried flowers, or even some silk flowers. You know what I mean? There's lots of things that you can use. So to save time, I've already cut up a number of pieces of foliage here. And just to show you, these will be some of them that I was saying to you that are a little bit bushier. Can you see the way, like, I'm still getting the length, you know what I mean? But instead of being a long, skinny, scrawny piece, you know, that way. Or again, there's another one there. And again, it's just that little bit bushy. And normally what I do is I remove the leaves that's at the bottom of the stem. Now that was a skinny one, the leaf is already removed, it's absolutely fine. And there we have another one. It's not real bushy, but you can see like there's 2 little branches on it. So you're kind of going by the overall length. But the bushier it is, it doesn't really matter. To be honest, the more bushy the pieces, the less of them that you're going to use. And that's why it's very hard for me to actually guide you and say you will need a specific number of pieces. But if anybody is watching there and you want to copy or write down, you know, that way, and say she approximately used so many skinny ones and so many kind of like fluffy ones, and it'll just give you an idea. Now before you insert them into the foam, as I said, it's really important that you remove the leaf at the bottom, okay? Because otherwise, if the leaf goes into the floral foam, first of all, it makes the hole a little bit bigger, which means there's a good chance then that the greenery is slipping and moving around, you know, that way, and it's not going to stay in the place that you put it in. Now, when I insert this foliage, I want the foliage to rest over the edge of the hat box. So I'm just going to tilt this on the side that you can see it, that there is a certain amount of space, can you see, around the bulb bowl and the particular hat box that I'm using today. But by me inserting the foliage on a slant that's resting out over the edge of the hat box, it actually helps to secure it in place. So don't feel that you have to glue it or Oasis fix it or secure it down into the centre of the hat box. Absolutely no need. Now, just so that you can see what I'm actually doing, I'm just going to remove it, but the plan would be that you make it actually in the hat box, okay? So it's just to show you that when I'm inserting the foliage, is that I'm inserting it kind of like near the edge of the floral foam, but it's going in on a slant. Can you see the way it's resting out over the edge of the dish? And when I go to add in the second one, okay, is again, I just leave a little bit of space that they're just barely tipping each other, and I place in the second one. And again, you'll always find it easier to either turn it around on your table, or often what I do when I'm doing the professional courses is I actually use a turntable, because most of our students would have one. But I do understand a lot of you at home are just working off your table like I am today. And again, your third piece, leave a little bit of space that's just barely tipping and add it in. Remember, you can always add in more, but it's a little bit difficult to take some out. Now I'm going to place it back into the centre of the hat box, okay, that you can see what I meant, the way it's resting over the edge of it. So leaving it inside the hat box now, I'm going to work my way around the edges, okay, inserting the foliage, a little bit of space in between them, and they're just barely tipping. Now, as I said, some of the pieces are skinny, like that one there, and other pieces that I'll pick up, you know, that way I'm just looking for a bushy one, are that little bit bushier, so they obviously fill in faster. You can see automatically I'm removing the leaf from the end of the stem before I actually insert it, and I find it easier to do it, like pick it up off the table, run your finger through it, and then just stick it in. And it's obviously a lot easier to make it when it's inside the hat box than when I demonstrated at the beginning, you know, that when I was just showing you where I was inserting it. So leave a little bit of space, have them barely tipping each other, work your way around, okay? And when you get to the other side, kind of like have a look and then kind of say to yourself, do you know what? Maybe I should have put another one here. Do you know, that way I just kind of feel I could do with another one. So again, you can just pick up a skinny one for a skinny place, okay? And we can just insert that in. But again, don't overdo it. Don't kind of say, oh, what about here, and what about here, and what about here? We can always go back afterwards and add more in if it's required. But again, less is best. So next thing what I want to do, just keeping our bowl in the centre of our hat box, is I'm going to stand one piece of foliage up in the centre. And I always find it's easier if it's a straight, skinny piece, okay? All the pieces of foliage are roughly the same length. I didn't use a measuring tape, I just roughly cut them, you know, that way 20 centimetres, some of them are 18 centimetres, another one might be 21. But because the box is hexagon, you get away with murder. So it's close to the centre of the floral foam, I'm going to stand this one up dead straight. And you can see already it's starting to kind of cover in the middle of the foam. And then with a couple more of the remaining pieces, now again, some of them are bushy like that, but some of them are quite skinny, you know, that way. I'm now going to add the pieces in on a slant, coming away from that centre one. So if I add one in there on an angle, if I add that one in there on an angle, you can see how quick then it fills in. Again, another one over here on an angle, maybe another one over here on an angle, and again, I just kind of feel it could definitely do with another piece there. And I must have measured these pieces of greenery out exact, because I just feel this last piece could possibly go in there. Now I do have more greenery and I could cut it up. And when you're at home, you don't do what I've just done and sweep it all onto the floor. You go and you sweep it into the bin. It's always handy to have a little bit of tissue or what would you call it, cloths beside you, just so that you can dry up your table. So that's our box and it's greened up, okay? And if you placed extra water into the container, it's obviously going to keep it fresh for ages. Now, with the tulips not being a long-lasting flower, and we just say you had an occasion coming up, just say Easter or Mother's Day or a birthday or a special occasion, and you plan on making one of these arrangements, what you could do to take the pressure off yourself is you could have it greened up a day or two in advance, leave it in a cool area, plenty of water in the container, and then 2 days later you could go up to the supermarket, buy the flowers that you're going to use, and then you can add in the flowers. So don't kind of feel that you have to do the greenery and the flowers on the same day. Most people do, but imagine if you were in a flower shop and you had 30 or 40 of these hat boxes to do. So because greenery lasts for ages, they normally green them up way in advance and it takes the pressure off them. Now back to the flowers. These have all been treated and conditioned already. So I'm just removing the elastic bands, and I'm now just going to take the plastic off the flowers. You do find with the plastic, if you leave it on too long, the flowers sweat inside the plastic, because flowers give off a gas called ethylene gas. Now again, we cover a lot of that on module 1. All these little tips, you know what I mean, that help to prolong the life of flowers. Now, one little tip about tulips, okay? Tulips continue to grow. So you know what, most flowers, when they pick the flowers and they're delivered from Holland to Ireland, or they come in from Colombia as well, by the way, like all over the world, like not just from Holland. But most flowers, when they're cut and they arrive, if they were cut at 50 centimetres, when they arrive in Ireland, they're 50 centimetres. If we cut a couple of centimetres off to place them in water, and now they're 45 centimetres, and I sell them to you, they're still going to be 45 centimetres. And a week later, they're still going to be 45 centimetres. Nothing happens. It's like their growth is stunted. But tulips are the opposite. Tulips continue to grow, and they could grow easily 10-15 centimetres extra on the length that they are. So something most people have never realised it and never noticed. So if you ever buy a bunch of tulips and you stand it in a vase of water, sometimes that's the easiest way to notice. Just kind of take heed of how far are the flower heads over the top of your vase. And in about 3 days' time, measure it again, and I bet they'll be after grown at least 10 centimetres, you know that way. So most people are fascinated by it. And in a flower shop, when we tell that to a customer, they nearly think we're after creating magic, you know that way, or we put like some special formula into the water to help. It was going to happen anyway. Now back to the tulips, okay? We have mixed colours, you know that way, and I'm going to cut these approximately the 20 centimetres, but I'm going to cut them on a slant, and when you cut them, some of the foliage, you see like that, will fall off. So any foliage that falls off, obviously it's going to go in the bin, but if you cut it and some of the foliage is still attached, you know, like that one there, leave that on, like don't take that off. They can look a little bit naked if you take it off. Like sometimes if I'm using tulips in a vase, I leave all the leaf on, but I wouldn't be cutting them short, you know that way. And again, sometimes to add an extra bit of foliage into your arrangement, this won't always work. It may be possible to cut like some of the stem that you have to see the leaf on it, and then when you add it into the arrangement, you see like that there, you're getting just another texture. Because that's something in flower arranging, is where we're looking for a little bit of texture going through the arrangement as well. But the leaf on its own won't go into the floral foam because there's no stem, you see, on the end of it. So it still needs to be attached to one of the stems, you know what I mean, that belongs to the tulip. And then you can kind of cut it. So there's the stem belong to the tulip, and there's the leaf still attached. That one is a little bit damaged, okay? So I'll go for the next one there, which is a little bit long. So sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't work out. We'll come to another one as we go along. So again, I'm cutting this 20 centimetres. I'm going to cut this one 20 centimetres, and so on. Remember, don't cut them too short, okay? Because at least if they're too long, you can go back and you can cut another bit off them. But if you've cut them too short, you can't add it back on. You know, that way it's a little bit of a disaster. So again, if you plan on using some of the foliage, okay, do what I'm doing here. Cut up your flowers, leave them kind of to one side, and keep all, if you want to call it your rubbish, keep all your rubbish kind of to one side. But we won't call it rubbish, we'll call it upcycling today, you know what I mean? So we're going to use some of the foliage, not all of it, you know what I mean, for a little bit of upcycling. So there's some fantastic colours here with the tulips. Now I know some of you may prefer to do it in all the one colour, and that's absolutely fine as well. But depending on the time of year, and it just happens that it's around springtime when I'm demonstrating this one right here. You could be watching this in the winter, by the way, but it just means that I always kind of find the mixed colours are very spring looking. So again, you can see some of the tulip leaf. I'm just leaving it on the stem, and you see the way I'm just kind of adding it in. So I'm adding a little bit around the outside, you know, that way, like I'm not putting them too close together. I'm leaving a little bit of space in between them. And I'm probably not going to add any up kind of to the middle of it, you know what I mean, because they are kind of quite heavy, quite big. So that's what it looks like with a little bit of the tulip leaf going in and out through it. Now you don't have to do that, by the way. Now, so that's going to be rubbish. So we'll have a look at our tulips, and I kind of feel if you get too kind of particular about what colour you're going to use, you know, that way when you're using mixed ones anyway, Don't think about it too much, just be very casual. But maybe there's a particular one, not necessarily the colour, but it just looks nice. So just have a look at your tulips there. And if there's, to be honest, these all look nice. And they're quite small because they're really fresh, you know, that way. But they are going to blow open and they'll definitely be twice their size. So remember that when you're making the arrangement, that you don't put them all sitting side by side, you know, that way, squashed together. Because then when they open, it's going to be packed. And the only time that you put flowers side by side squashed together is in a funeral wreath. And we don't want our hat box to look like a funeral wreath. So back to looking for the nicest one, okay? They're all nice. So I'm going to pick this lovely kind of like aubergine one. I just find that leaf is too close to the end there, so I'm just going to take that off. And I'm going to stand that up in the centre, do you see, of my hat box. Now remember, that is going to grow, you know, that way a little bit more. So again, if you want, and you want to push it down a little bit lower into it, it gives it that little bit of space, you know what I mean, that it can actually grow. So pick one that you would like to go into the centre of it. The next thing I'm going to do then is place a couple of them around the outside. Now again, don't overdo it. Less is best, okay? And especially when you're trying to kind of gauge like how many flowers to use. And a lot of you are beginners, you know the way, and you're not too sure. So by spacing them out and leaving lots of gaps in between it, then if you have leftovers, you can come back and you can fill in between the gaps. Where sometimes I find what happens is people pack all the flowers around the outside and then say, oh God, I've none left for around the middle. Be like dishing out a dinner and you had 5 dinner plates and you gave the first 3 plates a big lump of potatoes or rice or pasta, and then you had none left for the last 2 plates, you know the way, and then you'd be messing around trying to take some off the first plate and, you know, substitute. Where the idea would be you'd give them all a bit. And if you have extra left, this would be anybody, big Irish family, lots of kids, you know that way, and you have extra left in the pot, you might give the daddy a little bit more and the bigger kids a little bit more, and the smaller kid normally gets a small amount of dinner or whatever. Now there's probably people watching from all over the world and they can't relate to what I've just described there. Anyway, back to our flower arrangement. So here we have a white tulip and I'm just placing that in on a slant, resting out over the edge of the basket. Now I'm not going to pick up another white one even though it's right beside my hand, so I'm leaving a little bit of space and I'm going to put in a lemon one. Turn the arrangement around, you know, that way, and again I'm going to put in a pink one. So I'm just kind of like mixing the colours, you know, the way. Turn the arrangement around, pick up another colour, so I have kind of a beautiful kind of like orangey one there we go, and keep them kind of like resting down. Turn the arrangement around, I now have a red one. Now you can see some of them have a leaf attached and some of them haven't, you know, that way. So once I'm able to get the stem into the floral foam, you know the way, I leave the leaf on. If the leaf is in the way, which was with the first one, I'll just remove it. Have another one of these beautiful aubergine ones and we're going to stick that one in there. Sometimes you find when you stick it in, like you kind of move the bowl slightly, you know that way, so just balance it back up again. And we come back around and here I have, this is the space between the first flower and the last flower. One is going to be a bit miserable, so I'm probably going to put 2 in, but they're probably going to be a little bit closer than the other ones. That's absolutely fine. So you'd want eyes in the back of your head to be able to see exactly how much space I left in between all of the flowers. So I've just added in a lemon one and there we have a pink one. And now I'm going to go back and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now if anybody's watching there and you only put the 7 in, that's absolutely fine. And if there's anybody watching and you put 9, even 10 in, that's absolutely fine. If there's anybody watching and you've put 15 in, listen, you're down the back of the class, okay? You've done something wrong. Less is best. We can always go back and add in extra. So obviously if I've used 8 around the outside and I've 1 in the middle, I've 9 of my tulips used up. So now I know I have approximately 10 or 11. Allow that you may have broken one. So how I put the foliage in, remember when I was filling in the foliage in the centre and I kind of added it in on a slant coming away from the number 1. Well, that's what we're going to do now. And again, colour doesn't matter. I would try to avoid that white one being close to that white one there. So on that side of our aubergine one, I'm going to place in that tulip there on a slant. Turn your hat box around and again I'm just going to pick up a different colour. Let me see, I'll go for the yellow one. I'm going to place that one in there on a slant and I'm going to turn it around slightly and then I'm going to add the pink one in slightly on a slant. And can you see what I mean about the flowers all having their own little bit of space and their own little bit of distance? That's really, really important, okay? Because I know they look small at the moment, but they are going to open, do you know that way? And they'll definitely be twice their size, you know the way? There's a lovely red one. And again, there seems to be more of the aubergine colour than there is of the others, so it might look like I'm putting extras in. I still have 5 or 6 of the flower heads left on the table. So now it's just kind of like random. So if your eye, and this is where we always say to the students, you know what I mean, as they move through their modules, module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4, their eye actually starts to get trained and they see what we call the cop-on spot. And a cop-on spot is where your eye is drawn to and you're saying, oh my God, look at that gap. Is she not going to put a flower in there? And from the angle that you're looking at, you're probably looking at this area here and you're saying, I wonder is she going to put a flower in there? We actually call that a cop-on spot. So if anybody spotted that, fair play to you, you can now move back up to the top of the class. So this is where, for the last couple of flowers, you're looking for what we call cop-on spots. So as I turn the arrangement around, you might kind of say, what about that little gap there? So again, we'll just come along, we'll get a flower and we'll stick it in. It's important that each flower has its own space. As I turn it around, can you see that general area there? Is your eye kind of being drawn and saying, God, I wonder if she's going to do anything there and put another flower in because it looks a bit gappy or a bit holy. And that's kind of what you're doing. So you're just turning the arrangement around and anywhere that your eye is kind of drawn that you kind of feel I could possibly do with another flower in there, that's what you're going to do. Now you only have so many flowers, okay, so you can't create a miracle, and sometimes kind of what happens is you keep filling in or you kind of, your eye gets overactive and you're finding millions of cop-on spots. Remember, the flowers are actually going to grow and they're going to blow open a little bit more. So I have one more of these ones left, again another aubergine one, and I'm going to put it in. So that is the 20 tulips like used in that hat box, and like again you could leave it exactly as it is, you don't need anything extra. But I always find with flower arranging, and we cover this with our students on the module 1, there's all these principles and rules that we have to cover, you know, that way. So even though we're doing this as a kind of an amateur beginner's class, I still want you to kind of like follow some of the rules. Obviously I can't cover everything in a little demonstration like this. So this is where your wax flower is going to come in. So again with the wax flower, what I'm going to do is cut it up into pieces approximately 20 centimeters or thereabout. Now as I explained at the beginning of this tutorial, so if anybody is joining in late, go back to the beginning, do you know that way it's important? But it is sold by the weight. Now there's a lot of small pieces on this, can you see? So that's going to last for ages. So even though the tulips are not going to be the longest lasting flower out there, as I said at the beginning of this tutorial, is we can always pull the tulips out when they're dead and replace it with something else. But the foliage is still going to be alive, the wax flower is still going to be alive, you know that way, and obviously you'll have the hat box. And the hat box again can be reused over and over again. Now you will find with the floral foam, after a while, you know what I mean, if you've been taking stuff in and out of it or making like unnecessary holes, you know that way, eventually like your floral foam will fall apart. So what I would recommend at that stage, go to your local florist, buy another block of foam, use the same bulb bowl, use the same hat box, and then you'll have like another arrangement. And as I said at the beginning, this is going to make a fabulous gift for somebody for whatever the occasion is. Happy birthday, happy anniversary, just thinking of you, or get well soon. Now back to our wax flower, our little sprigs. There's no particular pattern for putting the wax flower in. Remember I talked about the cop-on spot and your eye will kind of be like guided, you know, that way towards a particular area. Well, that's what I want you to do. So again, in the little spaces between the flowers, you know, that way, and anywhere that your eye is drawn, so pick up a bit of wax flower, and at the beginning, because there's so many spaces, you can just randomly stick it in. Now a mistake people do is to keep concentrating on the middle of it, you know, that way, like don't be afraid to bring some of the little sprigs a little bit over to the edge of the hat box, like how we started off. Like even them miserable little ones that has hardly any flower on it, it is going to open. And the thing about this arrangement, right, again, do you remember I said to you about filling the bulb bowl up with water? If it's kept well watered, it's going to last, you know that way, and it'll keep the flowers that they are going to open. So can you see the way I'm adding a little bit of the wax flower out towards the edge of the arrangement, you know that way, not in between every tulip, again randomly, just here and there. Now again, I've very little of it in, and you can see already the textures, you know, that I'm getting, and it makes it really, really interesting. The other thing is wax flower has an amazing scent. It's kind of like a lemony scent. It's really, really nice. Where the gyp, I find, I love gyp now, and most of the public like gyp, but sometimes there's not a nice smell off gyp. It can smell a little bit like cats now. I'm not mad into cats, so it's probably maybe that's why I don't like the gyp. But there is a bit of a cat wee smell, you know that way, or a baby wee nappy smell kind of off it. So anyway, there's a lovely scent off this wax flower, and it is something different. It's probably one that maybe you haven't had as much experience kind of like using. So again, turn your arrangement around and randomly add in the little sprigs of wax flower. And I know, like, some people, when they see them little miserable ones, they say, God, Janette, is it even worth putting them ones in? Yeah, put them in. Because at the end of the day, you have paid and bought absolutely everything. And for anybody that's buying in wholesale, as well as paying for it, you also pay the VAT on it. The government will be looking for that off you, you know that way. So use up every little sprig of it, you might as well. And if it's not open today, it'll be open, you know what I mean, in a couple of days. And like, customers absolutely love to see the flowers opening, and that's what I love about the tulips, you know what I mean, is that they'll see it kind of changing. So every day when they look at this arrangement, it's actually going to improve with age, you know the way, it's a bit like wine. It'll get nicer and nicer as it goes on. So there I've used up all the stems of the wax flower, and as I said, the 20 stems of the tulips. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Listen, if anybody has any questions or any comments, absolutely comment underneath and I will get back to you. I'd really appreciate if you did interact with this video, even if it's just a thumbs up, a love heart, or maybe tag somebody. And you know what? You'd make my day if you shared this video. Like, we obviously depend on our social media pages. We depend on you, the public, to share our posts, share our demonstrations, and that's what helps to promote Case Flower School. If you have any questions at all about training here on our professional courses at Case Flower School, drop me an email, info@flowerschoolireland.com. Thank you for joining. My name is Janette and I'm from Case Flower School.